Yes, now it is. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect.
Okay. So because of this NAR settlement that went into place in August 2024, we are required to have a buyer broker agreement signed prior to showing a property. There is no negotiation on this. It has to be signed prior to showing the property. Some states have different laws. For instance, California just put into place that if they are not a member of NAR, they still have to have a contract signed prior to writing an offer. And different states have different rules. The MLS has to abide by NAR. So we have state rules, National Association of Realtor rules, and MLS rules. The bottom line is everyone has to have a buyer broker agreement signed prior to showing the property. It doesn't matter if it's for you personally, for a family member. It doesn't matter if it's your listing. Everyone that enters the home has to have it signed. If there's an open house, you still need to have it signed. It's a different type of agency, so it'd be a non-agency or non-exclusive, but anyone to go into a home or show a home must have this signed for the NAR settlement terms. Okay. We are finding out that a lot of agents don't understand that and they get really upset, and it's a hard conversation to have. I spent, gosh, probably an hour on the phone with the legal department the other day on this again for the fourth time. The bottom line is, if your contract is not signed, your buyer broker contract is not signed prior to showing your property, that means the contract is void and unenforceable. And those are hard words to hear. The legal team that I was speaking with says it is a tough lesson for adults to learn that they have to follow a contract. And there is no leniency on this. We can't say, oh, but I just thought this, or oh, but I just thought that. It doesn't matter. It is a contract that we all have to follow. It's like a listing contract, but it's for the buyer. That's a good way to put it. The contract must have a start date. It must have an end date. It has to have a location. So depending on what state you're in, it could have an exact location as an address, or it could have an area, a county, a city, or a state. Okay. You also need to make sure you have your services listed in your contract. And obviously a price of how much your services are worth. Now, one of the big points about these contracts is, and I've heard this quite often, is any industry that you go into, who makes the most money right up front with no training? Not very many. So when you are deciding how much you are worth on your buyer broker agreement, that's a discussion that you have to have with yourself. What are you charging your clients, your buyers, for your services? For me, I'm going to get the most I can. I feel that I am confident. I feel that I am educated in the business and I know more than most. Am I seeing a lot of 4%ers come over on the buyer broker agreement? Absolutely. Are they getting it? Absolutely. I'm also seeing a lot come in at 1.5% and 2%. Okay, so you have to have the discussion with yourself and then with your clients on what you feel your service is worth. Now, another huge point is on these buyer broker agreements. If you write that you're worth 1.5%, so you're only expecting to get paid 1.5%, you cannot ask the seller to pay you any more than that. The most you are allowed to be paid is that 1.5%. So if you put 0%, you can't get paid. The most you can be paid is 0%. So that's a big zero. And nobody works for free. We all deserve as much as we're owed. And so please, 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 when you're filling out these buyer broker agreements, make sure you double, triple check them, that you have a start date, an end date, a location, what your services are, and a price. Now, I reached out to the Department of Real Estate in the state
Kelly,
of
can I interrupt you
California.
for a second?
Huh?
Can you explain what you mean by location?
Okay, so a location for you, Lisa, in California, I'll just use that as an example, can be an address, it can be a city, a county, or the state, or an area. So, for instance, um, if if I were to do an exclusive, which means they're only working with me, contract, and if they buy anything in the city of, say, Huntington Beach, California, I have a 3-month contract with them. So I will get paid if they purchase anything in that 3 months.
So if they were going to do, if they switched to, say, Riverside, that would require a new agreement.
I would suggest that you just add it to your contract and have them initial it.
Okay, thank you.
Um, if you if you want to make a new contract, you would actually have to cancel your original contract. So it's a contract, so you actually have to cancel it. So you can do that, but it's just one extra form you're going to have to do to cancel it before you can create a new one.
No, I get that. I just wanted to be clear on multiple cities. You said location. They might start off with one location and then end up with another location. I wanted to know, you said that we can just add it to the contract or cancel the original one and make a new one because they decided they wanted to live, further south and north.
Of course, just know if you make an adjustment to a contract, all parties need to initial it because it's
But
a fully
is that the
executed
best way
contract.
of doing it, or canceling it and rewriting a new one for a new city or new location?
That's completely up to you.
Okay,
As long as you get all initials, you're good, or you can cancel whatever you feel is best.
thank you.
Of
And you could
course.
also probably do it just like a listing agreement where you're doing an addendum or a modification of terms and you're adding a separate page to it and you're identifying the buyer broker agreement. So that way everyone's signing as well. I think that's another way to do it.
Yeah, and I know most states do have a modification of terms to the buyer broker agreement, so that would be a great option.
I apologize, Miss Kelly. So you can't just put the state
You
and be
can
covered?
put the state, absolutely.
Because I don't want to do all those modification stuff. I mean, because Atlanta, Georgia, there's probably 20 different cities. I mean, within
You
10 miles around it. So
absolutely you can put the state. That would be great. It's just if you're a buyer and you agree to that, that's a great option. Now,
thank you.
most states also have two different forms. They have a buyer broker agreement and a property showing agreement. So the buyer broker agreement would be like, say, for instance, the state of Georgia. And the property showing agreement is more specific to one or two or three properties. And not every single state has that, but most do. Okay, so I see the property showing agreement is usually a shorter agreement than the buyer broker agreement. So, if you're first, say for instance, you get a Zillow lead, and gosh, it's hard to get somebody you just met to sign a contract. You might do better with the property showing agreement for just showing them one property. And then if after you build that relationship, you in turn can get a buyer broker signed, which is a little bit more detailed and more of a commitment. But that's again up to you, depending on how your relationship is or how good you do with a new buyer that you're just meeting. It is hard. I'm not going to say it's hard when you first meet somebody trying to get them to sign a contract committing to paying you 2% or 3% of the purchase price. But there is YouTube videos, there's tons of discussion out there on Reddit. You could go anywhere, probably on social media, and take online classes or with your local board or state boards. They have a lot of classes on suggestions on how to get them to sign it. But honestly, it's not your choice. It is required now for the NAR settlement terms. You can use that verbiage and go with that route. It is really, really hard. And I know Jeff and I and Jessica are struggling lately, having to have the conversation with salespeople stating they didn't get their buyer broker agreement signed before their purchase contract. Therefore, they're not entitled to compensation. None of us are. It's a really, really hard conversation for us to have, and we don't want to have that conversation ever. It's not fun for us. We want everyone to get paid. So I ask everyone to please, please stop what you're doing, take a deep breath before you write that contract. Better make sure your buyer broker agreement is dated prior. It's just not an option. We have to do it. And after people screaming at me, unfortunately, over this, we're not making this rule. It's a rule that's come down to the whole entire United States. Every single salesperson that is a member of NAR in the United States has to follow these rules. So it's super important that we do it. I have mixed views on it. Sometimes I feel like it's good because I feel like the experienced agents that have a lot of knowledge and have been doing this for a long time, they're going to get their commission, whatever they feel. I mean, I'm literally seeing 4% come over all the time. And the newer agents may not get as much, but they're also learning. And so it's definitely putting definition in our business on who is more experienced than others. There are some people that will not sign it, but then that's their choice. You can't force somebody to sign it, but then we can't show them the home. There are a lot of agents out there that aren't doing this, and they're doing open houses and they're not cooperating with this. And just know they will get caught. The associations are sending people out to test everybody, and it's happening. And there is no warning. I think the minimum fine is $1,500. There is no warning. They don't give you any leeway. There's no more. I mean, it went into effect in August, and that's it. We have to abide by this rule. Okay, it's not an option. So
one more question. I apologize just for
no, you're okay.
For an open house. Am I understanding you to say that we should have probably blank buyer brokerage agreements in case you get or just the fact that they came to the open house, they need to sign it?
Okay, great question. So in the state of California, in your car zip forms, there is actually an open house non-agency form. And you need to have that with you at your open houses, and you are supposed to turn it into the brokerage. And so, example, I know prior, I would never want to sign something going into an open house. Like, who would want to? You know, that's a little bit scary. The way it works is they have to sign to come in. Say they are refusing to sign or they don't want to give you their information. My suggestion is you ask them to read it. It's not very long. It's very, very short. And ask for their name, write down their name, and maybe say refuse to sign. We have to document it because I understand it's a public open house. We don't want to discriminate against anyone, but due to the NAR settlement terms, for us to have anybody come into an open house, we have to have them sign it. Now, with this form, you're working for the seller, providing information on behalf of the seller. That is the objection when you're signing this form, or the purpose of signing this form. The minute that your conversation changes from providing information on behalf of the seller to potentially representing the buyer is a fine line. So the minute that you feel it's going the other way, you in turn would then need to get a buyer broker agreement signed. And so that is going to be an experience thing. It's going to be case by case basis on where that line is from providing information from the seller in turn to representing the buyer. Does that make sense, Lisa?
It does. I understand. And again, these forms are found in zip forms.
Yeah, you can go into in California, you can go into Glide or zip forms.
Glide, that's right. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
whichever you
you.
like for the state of California.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. Does anyone else have any questions in regards to the NAR settlement terms or this form?
Yeah, Kelly, I have
I
a
do.
question. Oh,
Okay, go ahead.
if you're purchasing for yourself, do you list the compensation as 0%?
And you would need to put for Premier Agent Network, you would need to put a minimum of $2,500 as the compensation. And then after your fees are paid, anything left would then in turn be credited to you at close of escrow.
Okay, so that would be credited to us back as an income, so we have to pay taxes on that?
No, it wouldn't be credited back as income, just as a credit.
Okay,
Yeah, so we would just do it like a credit towards closing costs. But we do require the $2,500, regardless if it's yours or not, it's $2,500. And then after your fees, you're more than welcome to get that as income or a credit back to you, whatever you choose to
Okay.
do. That's up to you.
okay.
You know, just have open communication. You can reach out. I don't know what state you're in. You can reach out to your broker or myself or admin team at Premier, and we could help you with that.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Is it possible to rebate the client?
What do you mean rebate the client?
Like, I agree with him, like, rebating 2% of the 3% commission.
Can you, it would more or less be a credit.
Yeah, credit, like a credit.
Yep. And so when you do a credit, you really want to state that you're doing a credit for non-recurring and recurring closing costs at close of escrow.
Gotcha.
You know, and you can use the acronyms NRCC or RCC, but I don't believe that too many use the word rebate. It would definitely be a closing cost credit. But I understand what you're saying.
All right, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think someone was raising their hand to talk. You can go
Yes.
ahead if you want.
So I just had a question based on the open house situation, because of course, for open houses, some prospects already have agents. In that case, would they still sign another one, or?
No, as long as they can show you their buyer broker agreement, like on their phone or a copy of it, they do not
Okay.
have to sign.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I would just ask them to show you, you know, and this is going to be an issue because there's so many salespersons that are not educated in our industry that know the rules, and they're not having trainings and they don't understand, but that is the proper way to do it. They have to have one way or the other. You know, and if it comes down to it, again, we don't want to discriminate against anybody in an open house. Like, I don't want that to fall back on anybody because I'm hearing a little bit of discussion about that out there. But the form you can have them sign is a non-exclusive form, which means they're not tied to you. Non-exclusive means they're not working with only you. They can work with anybody. And so that would be the proper verbiage, is that it's non-exclusive. And regardless, for you to come in this home, you have to sign one or the other.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I know sometimes I say things and my words, I'm so used to the words being in this business for so long, and somebody may be new and it's foreign to them. So if you don't understand, please stop me and I'll say it a different way. Okay. A lot of people nowadays, when they do their open houses, they have their iPads there, their tablets, and they have ways to sign on there. I'm okay with it as long as you put the verbiage on there, you know, that you see that it's a non-exclusive, and so forth. They just have to have some sort of confirmation that it's an agreement when they're coming into the home. And, you know, when people push back, I'm sorry, but it's not their home. They're coming into somebody else's home, and the seller also needs to know who's coming into their home. You know, in the bigger cities, we have a lot of issues with people going in and stealing prescription drugs from the home. So it's always good to know who's going in and out of the home. so that the seller knows if something's stolen, we have a list, you know? So it is important. And the minute somebody pushes back, I guess you'll have to take it case by case on that, on how you handle it. Okay. Some suggestions. This contract is just like a listing agreement. It protects the sellers. The buyer broker agreement protects the buyer. So that's a good way to say things. They are contracts. When you take a listing, you get a listing contract signed. When you're working with a buyer, you get a buyer contract signed. Okay. Your job is to get the best price, terms, and protection. And this agreement outlines how you will do that for your client. And another verbiage, under new industry rules, I'm required to have this signed before we tour home. To the buyer, you still have control. This outlines the relationship and payment structure clearly up front. So there's no surprises. Okay. Our buyer compensation options are, you can be paid by the buyer out of pocket, which I am seeing that happen. I'm not seeing too many sellers say no, they're not going to pay, but I know on properties that have multiple offers or some of the fix and flips, the buyer's paying the agent out of closing, straight out of closing. So no seller is paying their commission. Here is something that I'm seeing happen more often. So in the contract, you can write that you wish for the seller to pay your compensation. But a lot of the escrow companies are wanting it to be shown as a credit from the seller to the buyer, and then the buyer pays the compensation. I am seeing that written on quite a few commission instructions lately. So that may change more in the near future as things come about. Right now, we're still allowed for the seller to pay the concessions through the contract, but it may change to be a credit from seller to buyer, and then buyer pays the commissions or compensation. I know that's a little bit confusing. It is for me too. So I've been working with a couple of the escrow or title companies. I know for the states that have attorneys, each state's going to do it a little bit different, but I am seeing that come out. So things may change state by state in the near future. If you do not sign a buyer broker agreement before showing, you cannot be paid. It's unfortunate. You just cannot be paid. The only way you could do it and get around it is if you cancel everything and start fresh. Cancel your escrow and start over and do it properly. But you can't, it's a hard lesson for us all to learn. You cannot be compensated if you don't do this contract prior. And again, if you put 2% on your buyer broker agreement, you could not be paid 3%. Let's go ahead, Lamika.
Probably a stupid question. Does this count for leases also, or just buyers?
It does count for leases. Great question. It does count for leases. So there is a tenant agreement, just like a buyer agreement. And so it's the same
Okay.
rules. That's a great
Okay.
question. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
No problem. I actually have a leasing client now that is asking me to tour, so I'm glad I asked.
Yes, please get that signed. That's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, so again, just a reminder, if you have a buyer broker agreement that asks for 2%, you cannot get paid 3%. You can modify it lower, but you can't modify it higher. Okay. If you put 0% in your compensation field on your buyer broker agreement, you don't get anything. You get 0 and you cannot fix it. So please, I had somebody the other day put 0. It's on a multi-million-dollar home. The seller was agreeing to pay them 3%. I had to make the phone call stating he's not getting paid, and he is a seasoned agent. Luckily, all parties agreed. They canceled the transaction, canceled escrow, canceled everything, and started over. Everyone was great on this one, but that's very rare. but the conversation is not great when you have to tell somebody that. It's not great. Okay. If you do not complete a buyer broker prior to showing a property, you could be fined a minimum of $1,500, as well as the brokerage could be fined, and the brokerage would most likely lose their protection under the NAR settlement terms. It is a very, very serious issue. So please, again, nobody wants to put $1,500 out of pocket. Nobody wants to have to deal with that. And then you raise a red flag on you for who knows how long. Okay. So I want you guys to think about these things. And it's a good conversation. Go on YouTube, go on Reddit, I even see stuff on TikTok about this. How are you going to explain your buyer broker to your buyers? Go ahead, John. See, John's raising his hand.
Hey, Kelly.
Hi.
Yeah, I had a question from one of the earlier points. So if you're in that situation where the seller's trying to pay you 3%, but you've signed an agreement, a buyer broker agreement for 2.5, but the contract isn't executed yet, what's the best way to navigate that situation? Is it just to cancel out that buyer broker agreement, sign a new one,
So
amend
you would
it?
have to,
What do you suggest?
if your purchase contract isn't signed yet or hasn't been accepted,
Mhm.
what you can do is you could cancel your buyer broker agreement, have a new one done, and then finish the offer.
I see. And I might have missed this earlier. What is the process for canceling that buyer broker agreement?
It's just a cancellation. It's just both parties have to agree to cancel it.
Gotcha. And how do you document that exactly?
There
Is it
should
just
be
a
a
simple
cancellation
email?
form in your
Okay.
what state are you in?
Illinois?
Yeah, there should be a cancellation form to the buyer broker agreement.
Okay. Thank you so
And
much.
so you would have to look in your forms, and it probably states the wording is probably cancellation, because there's a cancellation for a listing, cancellation for a transaction, and there's a cancellation for a buyer broker.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and again, I don't want everyone out trying to cancel these. That's not the point of these contracts. But a 3% versus a 2%, depending on the price of the home, could be a lot of money because I count every penny. So do what you can to make it work, but just make sure you document everything because you don't want to look like you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
That makes
And
sense.
so we had a couple recently that they said, oh, I have multiple buyer broker agreements. That's not how the form works. If you use the form, and then if you're done with if it doesn't expire, you would need to cancel it. It's not like you could just do multiple different ones. So it's really, really important to make sure you write down on your contract what it costs for your service, and that's it. And so we don't really want to be out there writing multiple buyer broker agreements nor canceling tons of them and rewriting them. I highly suggest you try to get it right the first time. I would honestly put I see most of them coming over with 3%. Again, all commissions are negotiable, but it's pretty common in our industry to have a 2.5 or 3% commission. Okay.
Is it pretty common, Kelly, for since we're only supposed to be in general only one buyer brokerage agreement, but since you have that area to select like the city, region, or state, and sometimes I think it says property address too. Like if you have two different properties and you have two different maybe potential commissions on there, that might be a good way to leverage two different agreements there, or is it just very uncommon to have two in general?
Yes.
Just wondering if there's any valid scenarios.
So the NAR settlement terms does not want you having more than one contract. They want you to decide with your client what your service cost.
I see.
So like when you go to an attorney's office, they say, I charge $350 an hour. Or when you go to a doctor's office, they charge this. They want us doing the same. So for your service, what is your fee? And that's it. So if the seller is willing to pay more, really you're only entitled to what you feel that your service costs. Like so say for instance, I'm talking to a buyer and I say, okay, great. For me to represent you, my fee is 2% of the purchase price. And that's it. And really, there is no negotiating on that. Like, that's what your fee is. And so that's all you can ask the seller to pay you is 2%. That's it. So if any contract that has a buyer broker agreement that shows 2%, but then I see in the purchase contract they ask for 3%, oh my gosh, that's our biggest violation. So we can't do that. So
I
if
see.
there
So
is a
that's why
verbal conversation,
it's better
if there's
just
a
to put
verbal
that
conversation,
3%.
that's a whole nother
Mhm.
ball game. And I see where you're going at with this. So that's going to be a case by case basis, but really, I suggest you ask for the highest amount possible on your buyer broker agreement up front.
That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate sharing the insight. I understand why you would suggest that now. It just kind of covers your ass basically to make sure you get paid. And then worst case
And
scenario,
you
you
could
just
tell
cut
your
it yourself.
client, like, say, listen, this is what I would do. And I mean, I know don't know everything, but this is what I would do. I would tell my client, listen, I'm putting 3% down here. This is a contract. I'm going to request the seller pay me 3%. If the seller does not pay me 3%, we can renegotiate. If you want, I mean, this is up to you. We can renegotiate at that time, but my service is 3%. So there is a modification of terms after the fact. If you want to lower your commission, you're more than welcome to. You can just never go up in your commission. So really, I would start with the most or the highest amount. And that's why I think I see a lot of people with 4%ers. They're going for the jugular at 4%. And some of them are getting it, some are not. If they aren't asking the buyer to pay the difference, then they're having them sign a modification of terms to reduce it.
Thank you, Kelly.
Kelly, I think
course.
it's also important to note that if the agent is also the buyer, that they have to have a buyer's or broker agreement with themselves.
Absolutely. It does not matter if it's you, your family member, anything. You have to have one for yourself as well. I hear that all the time. Well, it's just for me. You're still a buyer. Now, real quick, before I go on to my next discussion, on your listing, say you have a listing, and I know that no one is doing this, very rare. You need to be asking for a copy of their buyer broker. To show your listing, they have to have a buyer broker agreement signed. They can just send you a screenshot, but they have to have it signed. I know that no one's doing that, especially when we have the lock boxes on there, but they should be doing it. It's to show a property, they need to have that signed. So just know, if you don't do it, you're opening up yourself to potential litigation or fines or whatever it may be for not doing that, but it is required for the NAR settlement terms. Okay. Another discussion and to think about for yourself. What objections have you run into and how have you handled them? Okay. Think about it ahead of time. Practice your scripts, come up with it. I look up all the time on YouTube. I love YouTube on things and how to do that. There's also, if you guys are on Facebook, there's a website or a Facebook site called Lab Code Agents. So it's LAB Code Agents. If you're not on there, I would highly recommend you become be involved in that group. It's one of the biggest networking sites for realtors it's pretty much worldwide. There's a lot of information on there. Some of it's junk, but there is a lot of information on there and you can learn a lot from what people do on there. So I look at it all the time and pick up tips here and there, and I highly suggest it. They do go over things like situations and how other people would handle it or what they would say. And sometimes it's interesting. You could probably learn a lot from it. Okay. Another discussion. Are you using a buyer presentation or a buyer guide to discuss these things? I highly suggest it. If you go on Etsy.com, there are tons and tons of buyer representation guides, seller representation guides. there's so much on there and they're so cheap, a couple dollars. I really suggest doing that. It'll help you. It'll make you look more professional. You can just get it printed and do that. It really is nice when you come off professional to your clients. You are getting paid a lot of money, and our industry has a bad rap sometimes. So the more professional you are, the more ready to go you are, the better you are on your scripts. It really does help. Back in the day, I started at a company called Century 21 Action in Long Beach, California. And every single agent had to wear their yellow jacket. It was not an option. And they looked so professional. They were branded. Everybody knew who they were. I know our industry has changed since then, but do your best to be professional with these new contracts and make sure you have answers for your clients. It's not going to look good when you're asking someone to sign something, but you can't explain it. So read the contract, understand it, take any classes you can on it, but whatever you do, make sure you get it signed prior to your contract and make sure it's complete. Okay. Again, Jeff, nor Jessica, nor I, or anyone that answers the phone wants to have these conversations with the salesperson saying, oh, well, you can't get paid. You didn't get it done. It's not fun for any of us. And we want you guys to get paid. You're the procuring cause. And so that's that. So does anybody have any more questions on this?
Hey, Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
this is Lorenzo. So on additional training that I received, something that I thought was real powerful. The coach suggests, instead of saying commission, because it seems to have a negative connotation, something that you mentioned earlier, say that my fee is. So you set whatever your fee is, and that's it. It's your fee. And because just like a doctor or an attorney or a CPA, I mean, or any kind of profession, when there's a fiduciary responsibility and you're representing that person, it covers them. And you want to make sure, like you said, that you can show what value you're going to bring in your services, but, set your fee. And the word fee seems to have less of a negative connotation, and especially when you tie it to like any other profession, doctors and attorneys. Like, we have to get trained, we're licensed, regulated by the state. All that stuff is true for realtors. So we should be compensated for our work.
I agree 100%. And I think you're also right with that. It does sound differently to say fee versus commission or compensation. I know they changed it from commission to compensation, but it does. And forgive me, I keep saying commission when it should be compensation. That's my error. But I agree with you. It does sound better to say this is what my fee is for my services. And they can take it or leave it. But it is negotiable. So that's your right to negotiate on what you want to do on that. I'm a huge believer, and not everyone may agree with me, but I'm a huge believer of making something versus nothing. I do feel that nobody works for free, but I recently had an agent walk away from an $18,000 commission because she felt she deserved 40. And I was like, oh my gosh, so many agents I know would be jumping on this. And it became a huge discussion with her and I, and she chose to walk away. So I don't think that's the best option. But again, I don't get to make that decision for her. So just do your scripts, practice, read your contract so you know when they question you, you're ready to go. Because if you're being questioned and you don't have the answers, why would anyone want to pay you? It's your job to know how to respond to these hard questions. Back in the day, I had to do scripts all day long. Like, I was required through my training to do that when I first started, before we had all this technology. So please, 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 you have all this technology now to sit and practice. You don't even have to have someone help you. You can do it by yourself and just get back at it. And they have tons of groups to help you as well. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yep, no problem. So if I have a client and the client, they're a couple, and only one person's getting the mortgage, but they're both going to end up on the title during the purchase transaction. Do they both need to be listed on the buyer broker agreement, or just the
Yes.
person getting the mortgage? Okay.
Nope, they both need to be listed on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions? I feel like I probably gave you a lot of information, probably a little bit overwhelming for everyone. I can send out my document if you'd like me to everyone that kind of goes over everything. It's just the main points of the NAR settlement terms. But that's up to you guys.
I would like it.
Yes, please.
Okay. Absolutely. And you guys also know we have an open door policy here at Premier. You can go call and ask questions. I like to have my salespersons, if they need help, I ask them to send me their contracts and I'll mark it up with a red pen for them. So I just want to make sure that if you need mentorship or you need additional help, that we offer those services through Premier. I would prefer you to take that versus making mistakes and then it costing you financially. Or the brokerage financially, okay? And so, any other questions before we wrap it up? Nope, are we good? Okay, so I'm hoping that everyone understands the buyer broker agreement now. Please read it. Don't miss your compensation part to fill in. I'm seeing 0%ers come over and it's hard. Please, please, please don't forget that. Don't forget your dates before the purchase contract, and then you should be good. Okay. Okay, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your week and weekend. And I wish you lots of success.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is great.
Thank you. This is good. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
Thanks. Have a good one.
You too.